Welcome back to the deep dive. Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving into a truly unique source today, and I mean really unique.
Yeah, that's one way to put it.
It's not a policy paper, it's not some dry medical journal. It is the narrative, the evidence stack, and the complete story embedded within the lyrics of a song.
The song is You Looked Me in the Eyes, a Patient's Comeback.
And this piece, which is written and performed by Sherry Harris Music, it functions as one of the most compelling, I think, evidence-backed case studies we have ever encountered. And it's all delivered in the form of a musical confrontation.
The format is precisely why this material is so rich. I mean, by using a song, it lets us access the emotional intensity, the urgency of a really high-stakes medical meeting.
Right.
But at the same time, it's documenting these highly specific, verifiable health data points. So our mission today is, a deep analysis of the text itself. We are going to extract that core narrative, scrutinize the extraordinary themes of patient empowerment, and truly dissect the specific medical achievement that this song documents. This isn't just about listening to music.
No, not at all. It's about analyzing the strategy of a radical self-advocate.
Exactly.
And when you look at the source material, the lyrics, they set up this immediate, almost explosive yet highly controlled meeting. A meeting where a patient fundamentally shifts the power dynamic.
And she does it using this potent combination of self-knowledge, concrete evidence, and what the song itself calls facts and fire.
Facts and fire. I love that. It's such a profound assertion of autonomy.
And that assertion of autonomy is rooted in challenging the inherent power differential. I mean, the traditional doctor-patient relationship is built on this long legacy of medical paternalism,
Oh, absolutely. It often places the patient in a position of just passive reliance.
Right. And this narrative challenges that history head on. We're going to analyze exactly how the physical setting, the chairs, the stools, the elevation levels, and the dialogue itself were, weaponized by the patient to achieve a remarkable relational reversal.
So for you, the listener, whether you're preparing for a high-stakes negotiation or just trying to navigate the complexities of your own healthcare journey, this deep dive offers a masterclass in leveraging personal data. It shows how a fierce commitment to your own story, your own narrative, backed by irrefutable evidence, can not only lead to revolutionary changes in your health outcome, but can also force institutional norms to bend.
We're dissecting the anatomy of a successful personal revolution.
So we jump right into the confrontation, and the opening line is maybe the most forceful thesis statement I've ever seen in a piece of narrative. It's, you ever have a patient kneel you down with facts and fire?
That language is so intentional.
It is. It immediately tells you this is not a passive consultation. This is an aggressive, proactive, and highly intentional declaration of war against the status quo.
And it instantly flips the script on expected behavior. The term kneel, that traditionally implies deference, right? Submission, supplication.
Yeah, you kneel to authority.
Exactly. But here, the patient, Sherry, she uses the sheer force of her validated knowledge, the facts and fire, to symbolically force the physician into a position of deference toward the data she carries. It is an extraordinary inversion of expectations from the absolute first moment of the encounter.
And the visual details of her arrival, they add this whole deeper layer of complexity. She walked in wearing strappies and a storm in my chest.
Oh.
I keep coming back to that juxtaposition. Strappies suggests vulnerability, maybe a casualness or a comfort that, it belies the intensity of the situation.
It's a person showing up as they are.
Exactly. Not in some clinical uniform of health.
Right.
And yet, she is carrying the internal state of a storm in my chest, a mixture of intense emotion, immense preparation, and maybe even some righteous anger over not being recognized before.
That phrase perfectly encapsulates the lived experience of entering a clinical environment where you're fighting not just for your health, but for recognition of your story. You are simultaneously vulnerable in your everyday clothes and internally fortified by conviction. And that conviction is built on evidence. She carried papers, charts, receipts, and truths I never confessed.
And that's where we see the two distinct pillars of her argument.
Yes.
Let's break those pillars down for a second. The papers, charts, and receipts, that's the objective evidence. The hard, undeniable data points that any clinic would recognize. These are the verifiable outcomes.
That is the empirical proof. It's what the system requires. But then she adds, truths I never confessed.
And that's the other side of the coin.
It is. These are the subjective, deep, personal histories, the underlying causes, the trauma, the lifestyle details that most patients, due to fear or just rushed appointments, they keep them hidden.
So Sharian arrives asserting that both sets of evidence, the objective data and the subjective truth, are equally vital for the doctor to understand the complete clinical picture and her unprecedented success.
She's essentially saying, you can't understand these numbers without understanding my story.
Right. So moving from her entrance, Sherry immediately tackles the core systemic issue that I think renders so many patients powerless, the invisibility issue. She describes fumbling her words from that cursed black chair and then stating plainly, "Doc, when I sit here, I vanish."
The cursed black chair, what a powerful symbol.
Isn't it?
It's rarely comfortable, it's often lower than the doctor's stool, and it puts the patient at this immediate physical disadvantage. You're often facing away from the screen or the chart that holds the data about your own body.
It's the physical architecture of institutional hierarchy.
That's a great way to put it. It's designed to encourage passive reception of information, not active partnership. So that feeling of vanishing is such a common patient complaint feeling, reduced to a set of symptoms on a monitor rather than a whole visible person.
And this feeling of being unseen, that's the catalyst. It's the breaking point that necessitates the radical shift that follows. But what's so interesting is the physician's response, which is unexpectedly receptive.
It really is.
You said, "Let's swap the air."
That phrase, "let's swap the air," is so unusual. It signals an immediate and frankly crucial buy-in from the professional.
It's an opening.
It's a huge opening. They recognize the validity of her complaint, that the environment itself is hostile to true communication and trust, and they agree to change the rules in the moment. It's a spontaneous, necessary agreement to co-create a neutral, safe relational space.
And this leads us to the physical reversal of power, which is the immediate, tangible payoff of her initial assertion. The doctor leapt to the bed, "Gave up your throne."
The language is almost biblical in its weight, the throne.
It's not subtle, is it? It explicitly identified the doctor's usual seat, the one behind the desk or the high stool, as the position of ultimate authority and unilateral power.
And by vacating that throne and moving to the exam bed, a piece of furniture usually associated with patient vulnerability and passive examination, the doctor instantly diffuses the traditional power structure.
You have to remember the psychology of height, right?
In almost every professional setting, height implies authority. By voluntarily moving lower, the doctor physically signals an openness to collaboration.
And Sherry capitalizes on it instantly. She claimed your zone and then sat on the blue stool, eye level.
And this new spatial reality is transformative. The doctor is now kneeled at your screen while the patient is physically positioned at parity. The doctor is slightly looking up, or at the very least looking directly across at the patient.
This physical parity is just fundamental.
It is. The doctor is kneeling, looking at the data, but critically, they are now positioned to look directly at the patient without looking down. This is why the patient later demands eye contact. The physical environment has finally made it possible.
So this literal achievement of being eye level fundamentally flipped the game. It ensured that communication could finally be bilateral, built on visual and spatial equality.
It's so much more than just moving furniture. It's a nonverbal restructuring of the entire therapeutic alliance.
It validates the patient's demand for respect before the medical data is even fully presented. I mean, the visual image, the doctor kneeling at the screen, the patient sitting commandingly at eye level, it's unforgettable.
It really is.
And it underscores that challenging institutional barriers often begins with a simple, assertive redistribution of physical space.
And this physical foundation of parity is what prepares the way for the clinical validation. Sherry has ensured that when the doctor processes the frankly impossible data she's about to present, they have to do it from a place of physical and emotional receptivity, not from behind the fortress of the throne.
Okay, so the physical ground has been leveled. Respect has been established through this spatial rearrangement. Now we move to the undisputed core of Sherry's argument, the clinical evidence that justified her whole confrontational entry. This is the unbelievable reversal.
Right, and this is the moment where we need to ensure clarity for you, the listener, on the medical mechanics involved here. The crucial line is, Sherry dropped that A1C in 2 damn weeks.
Okay, so for anyone who might not be deep in the medical weeds here, let's just pause on that. What exactly is an A1C, and why is that timeline so important?
So A1C, or glycated hemoglobin, measures your average blood sugar levels over the preceding 2 to 3 months, roughly 90 to 120 days. It gives a long-term view of your glucose control. It's not about what you ate for breakfast this morning. It's a bigger picture.
It's the average. So when we hear that she achieved a significant drop in that long-term metric in just 14 days, 2 weeks, we need to really emphasize why that is so extraordinary.
Exactly. Clinically, A1C is designed to be a slow-moving target because it reflects the life cycle of your red blood cells. To see a significant reduction in just 2 weeks is, well, physiologically speaking, it's almost impossible under standard conditions.
So what does it suggest?
It suggests an immediate, drastic, and extremely successful intervention that moved her average glucose levels so aggressively, so fast, that it began influencing the 90-day average far sooner than anyone would expect. I mean, it just defies the typical biological timeline.
And the magnitude of this reversal is critical. But the claim is further strengthened by the methodology she details. No insulin, no metformin, just me.
This is Sherry claiming complete ownership and control. She's emphasizing a purely self-directed, non-pharmacological comeback.
She's saying, I didn't use the standard tools.
She's saying, I did this using my own internal knowledge, my discipline, and my body's potential, without relying on the very chemical interventions the system usually relies upon. This lends immense credence to her overall claim that her self-knowledge and her unique commitment surpassed standard clinical protocols.
And so naturally, the doctor's reaction is exactly what you would expect from a trained professional encountering a data outlier that just defies all institutional expectations. They stated it twice. Unbelievable.
And that clinical skepticism is necessary, right? If the doctor hadn't expressed some disbelief, the achievement wouldn't have the same dramatic weight.
Right, it would just be another data point.
But Cherie refuses to let that disbelief stand as skepticism. She immediately transforms it into validation. I said, damn right. She insists the accomplishment is not anomalous or lucky, but intentional, earned, and therefore deserving of belief.
This incredible feat earns her this signature move, which is now formalized in the narrative. It's called pulling a Sherry.
I love that.
She pulled a Sherry in the cold exam lab. This establishes her name as a verb, defining this extreme, self-led, documented reversal as an identity-specific act. It's now a signature benchmark of exceptional patient performance.
And because the data is so shocking, the professional naturally attempts to praise her, maybe to bring the tension in the room down a bit. But Cherie stops the conversation flow. She finds the initial praise insufficient.
This is where she demands authentic recognition. She's moving from data-based credibility to emotional validation. She commands, face me when you say it, bro. Now, let's step back and put on our critical lens for a second. That phrase, face me when you say it, bro, it is assertive. It's even potentially confrontational. Doesn't this level of demand risk alienating the physician, especially after all the careful work she just did to establish parity?
That is the risk. It absolutely is. But Sherry is calculating. She's already established herself as a data expert, and she's secured the physical high ground. So this command isn't aggression. It's a final, necessary insistence on seeing.
And the word bro.
I think the term bro, while it's casual, is part of her establishing a relationship that is authentic, not just clinical. She's demanding that the doctor perform the validation not just as a professional duty, but as one human acknowledging the intense struggle of another.
So it is the critical validation moment. The doctor complies, shifting their gaze from the screen and the chart directly to the patient's face, resulting in the title of the song, Seeing the Patient with Bright Blue Eyes.
And this is the payoff of all that spatial work they did in Section 1. Because the doctor is kneeling at eye level, when they shift their focus from the chart to Sherry's face, the connection is direct, unmediated, and profound.
So it converts a clinical acknowledgement of a good number
into a human recognition of a powerful person. The eyes are the conduit for acknowledging the fire that fueled the data.
It really speaks to the deep psychological need for validation in a healthcare setting. I mean, we don't just want our results to be good. We want the professional to acknowledge the sacrifice, the willpower, and the struggle that generated those results.
Exactly.
Sherry forced the doctor to look past the symptom and see the sheer force of will that created the miracle.
And that demand for eye contact is truly revolutionary in contemporary medicine, where, the computer screen so often acts as a physical and psychological barrier. Sherry is forcing the professional to engage fully, confirming that true partnership requires the professional to look away from the data and truly see the source of the data, the human being. So we shift now from the external verifiable data that A1C dropped to the internal subjective data, which Sherry presented as the truths I never confessed.
Right.
This section explains the why behind her prior illness and the profound necessity of her self-driven comeback.
And this is where the narrative gains its profound emotional weight. Sherry provides her own self-diagnosis for the long-term physiological struggle, explaining why her thyroid fell through the floor. She directly links this specific physiological decline, an autoimmune or endocrine issue, to chronic, unrelenting life stress.
And this linkage is so incredibly important and is often ignored in the rush of standard care. The specific connection is 7 years of trauma still stuck in that war. So she explicitly links a major debilitating physiological breakdown, the thyroid issue, to chronic emotional trauma. Standard medicine often separates mind and body. Sherry insists they are inextricably linked. She's claiming that the war she was stuck in was physically manifesting in her endocrine system.
And this isn't just a metaphor, is it? We know clinically that chronic trauma and severe stress lead to sustained cortisol release, which can profoundly disrupt the endocrine system.
It absolutely can. It contributes to thyroid dysregulation, inflammation, and metabolic disorders like diabetes. So Sherry's self-diagnosis aligns perfectly with psychosomatic models of chronic illness.
She then gives us this incredibly insightful mechanism of coping and withdrawal. She explains that her fatigue isn't merely exhaustion, it's an early warning system.
That self-care fatigue is my signal for fear.
I mean, what an incredible piece of self-awareness. She has translated a profound emotional state fear into a concrete physical and behavioral response. I shut down with no one near.
That is such a powerful insight for any clinician. She's giving the doctor the functional map of her illness behavior. It suggests that any previous perceived non-compliance or illness trajectory was not a failure of willpower, but an extreme self-preservation response to ongoing trauma.
And that context is essential for understanding the patient's entire history.
And because Sherry is offering this deep context from a position of data-proven authority, the doctor is able to receive it without judgment. And this leads to the moment where she reveals her personal wounds. You saw the scars, the blood, the burn.
And whether these are literal physical scars or symbolic descriptions of deep emotional wounds, or both, they represent the totality of her pain history.
And the doctor's reaction is validation itself, but didn't flinch, you let the truth return. This is the highest level of acceptance.
It really is.
It signifies a non-judgmental acknowledgement of the complete, messy, ugly picture of the patient's life. The doctor's lack of flinching confirms that the relational space they created through that eye-level conversation is safe and capable of handling these difficult truths.
And then the narrative introduces a detail that is so unique and personal that it just grounds Sherry as an individual, not just a case file.
The Zazu detail.
The Zazu detail. This is where she lightens the heavy emotional material. She mentions Zazu climbs, leaves trails of love. And we learn Zazu is identified as a parrot through the later reference to parrot mom stuff and bird claws.
At first, this seems like just a charming, quirky aside, but it serves a crucial purpose in controlling the narrative about her physical appearance.
Right. Sherry clarifies the visible tracks on her skin. Not needle tracks, just parrot mom stuff.
That is a profound moment of patient agency.
It is.
Sherry preemptively corrects a likely professional assumption. In a standard clinical setting, unexplained tracks or marks on a patient's body can trigger suspicion of substance use or self-harm, which can introduce bias into treatment.
Oh, for sure.
By presenting the explanation, the harmless, quirky truth about her bird Zazu, she controls the interpretation of her own body and actively corrects the medical gaze.
It is brilliant advocacy. She uses a personal, humorous detail to dismantle potential professional prejudice before it can even take root. And the true human connection culminates in the doctor's response to this unique detail.
Heard Zazu speak in human tongue.
And then laugh so hard you came undone.
That phrase, came undone. It means the sterile, professional shell of the physician just collapses entirely. The laughter is the climax of human connection overcoming professional distance.
This is the moment the doctor stops seeing the case file, the chronic illness, or the potentially unstable patient,
and sees a complex, deeply dedicated human being who loves her talking parrot, who has survived immense trauma, and who just achieved a documented medical miracle.
The humor acts as the final bridge. The professional barrier is completely dismantled. The inclusion of Zazu transforms the entire interaction from a clinical review, an analysis of symptoms and data, into a genuine human encounter built on laughter and shared reality.
And this acceptance of her full quirky identity is what sets the stage for her final, powerful declarations of self-worth.
So with the data established, the trauma revealed, and the human connection secured through a parrot named Zazu, Sherry now moves to redefine her entire identity. This is about turning a data point into a personal mythos.
She insists on defining herself not by her previous illness, but by her current astounding success. She declares, "You learned that day I'm not unstable. I'm a miracle. That sounds like a fable."
That is such a powerful reclamation of her status. The medical system so often defaults to labeling patients as complex or non-compliant or unstable.
And Sherry rejects these clinical labels. She asserts a positive, almost mythic self-description. A miracle.
It's an insistence that her success is rooted not in luck or some accident, but in her exceptional willpower, which makes her story worthy of being told, like a fable.
And she grounds this miracle in this beautiful synthesis of the subjective and the objective. She names the precise tools of her miracle. With bird claws, data, and no disguise, and fire you can see in my eyes.
Look at that inventory.
It's incredible. We have the personal quirk, bird claws, symbolizing her unique life, the objective proof, data, the profound personal transparency, no disguise, and the emotional fuel, fire.
It confirms that the synthesis of both her measurable results and her personal passion were necessary for the success. You couldn't have achieved the data without the fire.
Not at all. They're two sides of the same coin.
The narrative then further solidifies her credibility by revealing a documented history of success, making sure this 2-week drop wasn't just a one-off. She quotes the specific, verifiable data points regarding a past success. Back in 2019, it was 9.6 to 6.3.
And let's fully grasp that data. A reduction in A1C from 9.6%, which is significantly high, and indicates prolonged poor control.
Down to 6.3%.
Down to 6.3%, which is near normal and a phenomenal achievement. That is a monumental health reversal. By mentioning this past success, Sherry proves that she has a pattern of exceptional self-directed health management.
It solidifies her authority.
It completely solidifies her authority and her expertise in her own care. It makes the current success impossible to dismiss as just a fluke.
And this documented pattern leads the professional to transition from observing one specific patient to thinking about the broader implications for public health. The doctor asks the most fundamental question of the whole encounter.
You asked, why don't others do the same?
They're trying to generalize the success, right? They're seeking a protocol they can apply to the next 1,000 patients.
And this is a moment of profound acknowledgement. The doctor sees Sherry as a successful case study who has cracked a code, but Sherry, having fought so hard for her specific identity to be acknowledged, she pushes back against that generalization.
With a confident, assertive, and just definitive answer, I said, because they're not Sherry. That's my name.
Oh.
That answer rejects the idea that a standardized protocol can capture the miracle.
It implies that the current system fails precisely because it treats everyone as a generic, compliant patient, rather than as an individual with Sherry's specific trauma history, her specific discipline, and her unique internal fire.
The implication is clear. You cannot replicate the result without acknowledging the unique, individualized input, the whole package of the person that generated it.
The medical establishment wants a repeatable mechanism. Sherry says the mechanism is her unique self.
And the final stanza of the song, it just secures the legacy of this one meeting. Sherry acknowledges the previous, distant relationship. She was seen once before, but never quite, until today, in that cold blue light.
That cold blue light of the sterile exam room is where the warm human truth and the undeniable data finally forced true recognition.
The goal was never just personal health. It was creating a lasting imprint on the medical professional. The promise of future change is clear and is targeted. Now you'll remember, every time you see a patient pull a Sherry in record time.
So the act of pulling a Sherry is meant to become this indelible psychological benchmark for that doctor, a new, impossibly high standard for what self-advocacy and commitment can achieve.
It forces the doctor to reconsider the limits of patient potential every single time they encounter similar symptoms in the future.
And the final summary perfectly encapsulates the method and the unique data-driven victory. No strikes thrown, no lashing needed, just truth. And one hell of a reversal.
The confrontation was not aggressive in the sense of accusation or anger,
but aggressive in the sense of demanding truth and demanding acknowledgement, backed up by irrefutable clinical data. The victory was achieved through honesty and documented success, not conflict.
And the reversal here is so multi-layered. It's a profound health reversal, it's a structural power reversal in the room, and it's a relational reversal between professional and patient.
Sherry succeeded not by fighting the doctor's authority, but by compelling the doctor to step out of the role of sole authority and step into the role of human observer and partner. So this deep dive into "you looked me in the eyes," a patient's comeback, reveals this comprehensive and frankly, brilliant strategy for patient empowerment.
Absolutely.
We've analyzed how Cherry meticulously used external preparation, the charts, and shared profound internal truth, her trauma, and then it engineered a radical physical shift, that eye-level kneeling, to achieve visibility and force the professional validation of her incredible health turnaround.
The core insight woven throughout this entire powerful narrative is that the catalyst for profound self-healing is often the simple human act of being truly seen. The physical act of the doctor moving to the floor and looking her in the eyes was as necessary to the success of that consultation as the dramatic A1C data itself. It's a reminder that healthcare is fundamentally a human relationship, not a transaction.
And this story provides a model for everyone, regardless of your field. It highlights the immense power of self-knowledge paired with concrete, verifiable evidence when you're navigating any system that relies on inherent power structures.
Know your data, own your complex narrative, and demand the respect and parity you have earned.
That's it.
And this brings us back to the doctor's profound question. Why don't others achieve this level of reversal? Sherry's answer was so definitive. Because they're not Sherry.
Really?
So if the key factor for this miracle is truly being Sherry possessing her specific history, her unique commitment, and her ability to articulate both her trauma and her data, this leaves us with a critical thought for the future of medicine.
If clinical success for outliers requires such personalized recognition, what specific element of a patient's complex identity, their passion, their trauma, or their unique self-knowledge, must a professional learn to acknowledge and leverage to unlock that same self-driven miracle in the next person?
And if the current system prioritizes generalized, one-size-fits-all protocol over personalized eye-level recognition, how many potential Sherrys are currently vanishing, unheard, and unseen in that cursed black chair every single day?
That is something worth pondering.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the extraordinary narrative and complex psychology. We'll see you next time.
You ever have a patient kneel you down with facts and fire? Yeah. Welcome to my return. I walked in wearing strappies and a storm in my chest. Carried papers, charged receipts, and truths I never confessed. Fumbled words from that cursed black chair. Said, dog, when I sit here I vanish. You said, let's swap the air. You leapt to the bed, gave up your throne, kneeled at your screen while I claimed your zone. Blue stool, eye level, we flipped the game. You listened close and remembered my name. You said, unbelievable. I said, damn right. Pulled a Sherry in the cold exam light. Dropped that A1C in 2 damn weeks. No insulin, no metformin, just me. You praised me once, I stopped the flow. Said, face me when you say it, bro. And you did, with bright blue eyes. That's the day you looked me in the eye. I told you why my thyroid fell through the floor. 7 years of trauma still stuck in that war. Told you I shut down with no one near. That self-care fatigue is my signal for fear. You saw the scars, the blood, the burn, but didn't flinch. You let the truth return. Zazu climbs, leaves trails of love, not needle tracks, just parrot mom stuff. You said, unbelievable. I said, damn right. Pulled a Sherry in the cold exam light. Dropped that A1C in 2 damn weeks. No insulin, no metformin, just me. I bled for peace, I cried for breath. I fought like hell to cheat near death. Then I came back with charts and grace. And you looked me in the face. You used to blink, shift, nod, retreat. Now you kneeled on tile at my CGM feet. You heard Zazu speak in human tongue. Laughed so hard, you came undone. You learned that day I'm not unstable. I'm a miracle, that sounds like a fable. With bird claws, data, and no disguise and fire. You can see in replaced in truth, and no one helped except my proof. You said, unbelievable, I said, remember me. Back in 2019, it was 9.6 to 6.3. You ask, why don't others do the same? I said, because they're not Sherry, that's my name. You saw me once, but never quite until today. In that cold blue light, now you'll remember every time. You see a patient pull a Sherry in record time. No strikes thrown, no lashing needed, just truth, and one hell of a reversal.